Hello, welcome back. Hopefully at this point you are more or less familiar with how to use user interface of Houdini, how to navigate, pan camera around, press some buttons and not get confused by Houdini interface. So let's say we want to create a low poly environment. And so how are we going to do that? Now, first things first, I just want to be completely clear about one thing. And you better familiarize yourself with this workflow because it's consistent around whatever I'm going to show you. I will be creating new nodes, new geometry, new pretty much everything using the tab menu. Instead of right-clicking, searching for things, I'll just press tab. And usually I start just typing things like, for example, geometry. I press enter again to jump inside. And so let's get started. First, we will add a grid. So again, tab, start typing grid, enter. Again, I will just hold down spacebar, Shift H, just to get the get zoomed out to the grid. And as you can see, we have a grid that has like 10 rows, 10 columns, and what I want to do is have this grid represent a ground. Now, if I drop down a mountain node, I press tab, start typing mountain, then I press Shift Enter, so it automatically activates. As you can see, something is already happening. We see that if we increase the height, it will start displacing the points of the grid, and that will be sort of our representation of the low poly grounds. But what I really want to do is first create different topology, because right now, as you can see, it's just not the back rectangles going from top to bottom and from left to right. So what I want to do is have more irregular topology, irregular representation of how our grid is built. So again, this is the grid. I will disconnect our mountain for a second, and to remesh our grid into something with a natural topology, which in my opinion will serve better, we press hit the tab key, and actually it's called remesh. So that's this is useful. We press Shift Enter, and as you can see, something already happens. We see those triangles, but there is a bit too much triangles to my personal opinion. So the target size, we can increase that until it looks kind of interesting. Okay, this is a bit too much. I think this will be okay. Next up, I will connect back our mountain, and I will decrease the height of the mountain, or maybe just increase the element size. So what it does is it controls the noise that displaces our geometry. If I tweak the offset, and by the way, you cannot just type in numbers like 1 or 2 or something. You just can hold down middle mouse button, and there is ladder appearing. And if you just move your mouse left or right, it will be changing the destination of the offset, or any other thing. Like if you want to change the height, it will work on height. It will work everywhere. It has some numerical numbers. So that's really useful. Okay, so again, I think this height is a bit too much. Maybe we can decrease the element size. So this is kind of what we have representing our grounds. Now, what I want to do next is select the middle part of our ground to create kind of the shore of little river. Now I press the S key. As you can see, now we can select like this, but this is not great. What I want to do is just brush select, kind of like draw with a cursor, and you can do that by actually enabling the brush select. Here it is. As you can see, now we can draw select. Just hold down the left mouse button, drag it like something like this. I think it's okay. And now we have our geometry selected. Next up, I will press the D key and just move it down like that. And that's it. This is gonna work, hopefully, for our river. Now, next up, I'm gonna extrude everything in our geometry. And what extrusion will do is create, it kind of like will fatten up our geometry. Currently, as you can see, the grid, in fact, is infinitely thin representation of geometry. So if we want to thicken it, we need to extrude things. But if we just start extruding things, you can see at some point it gets broken, right? I don't really want that. Of course, this is very useful, and we will talk about this a little bit later. But for now, we can just make the distance 0 and transform extruded front. And what's that gonna do? We can just move, oops. We can just move oops, I think it's in the Z axis. Okay, yeah. We can just move it downwards. Okay. And this will thicken our geometry. Now you're looking at this and thinking, well, this looks kind of weird, right? Because there is no thickening of geometry happening just yet. So what we're going to do now is click the output back. Okay, now our geometry looks kind of thick. But the problem is that it's kind of weird blue color. So again, let's look at this. If we go and look at from the downside, you can see that it's blue on the downside. On the upside, it's kind of white. So what is happening? Now, to understand what is happening is that we have to look at the display primitive normals, click this button. And as you can see, we now have normals. Normals represent the orientation of the faces, in our case, primitives. Face primitive and polygon is more or less the same name for one entity, which is usually the polygon. So the primitive normals show us where our primitives, faces, polygons are looking at. As you can see, they are looking upwards, which is represented by those kind of arrows that are going up. Okay, so when we extrude, we accidentally inverted our geometry, but it's fine. We can reverse the normals by pressing Tab, start typing reverse, Shift Enter. Whoops, Tab, reverse, Shift Enter. Accidentally, it was in the selection mode, so I pressed Escape. I don't know what's happening, but for some reason it was operating in the viewport. So I just right-clicked here, started typing the reverse, and it worked. Okay, finally, it's not inverted, it's not blue, it's white. So I will just turn off the showing of the normals. Okay, so what's next? Next, I want to create some sort of a river. Now, to make a river, I'll just make a box. And now, first of all, let's call it landscape. It's not actually landscape, I think it's ground. Ground should be better. So we have our ground, and next I'll hit the tab, start typing geometry again, dive inside, and now I create another box. And this box, if we make it 10 times bigger, you can see that it now represents the same scale as our grid. Now, where do we see like the scale? Because the size is 111 currently, and the uniform scale scales it up by this amount. So if we make it 3 times bigger, it will be actually 3, 3, 3. So these numbers multiplied by these numbers is the result. Now the ground, that we had initially was the grid of the size 10 by 10. So this is why if we make the uniform scale 10, it will be as big as the ground. Now, me personally, I think we'll have it like 9.5. And this size, we will decrease to 0.1, maybe even less. And then I hit Tab, start typing transform, Shift Enter, press Enter to move it in the viewport. And there you go. Now, actually, I'll just go back to our ground and we will see if we can fix the poly extrude bottom part. Let's see. Let's go to front transform and scale in the Z-axis. If we make it 0, it should straighten up. But then again, we should move it downwards a bit more. Okay, this looks better. By the way, I'll just go and make our grounds with the color of the grounds. To do that, I will hit the tab, start typing color. This isn't exactly the best way to colorize our geometry, but since we are doing like a stylized low poly environment, it will be fine. So for the color, I want something greenish, not yellowish, not exactly very saturated solution that will serve just well. Okay, now we clearly see our grounds. Then we go to our river and let's hit the tab again and again say color and make it bright blue. Okay, so next thing, I will transform it. And by the way, I can get back to our transform that I had previously. Hit the enter key and I just wanted to position it in such a way that it doesn't get shown through our representation of the ground, because this is kind of weird. Now, the solution obviously could be that we could scale it. Whoops, Control Z to undo. Scale it down. So this looks kind of better. And protrude it. All right, so now we have our sort of river and our ground showing up, which is fine. Since we have talked about normals just a little bit, I want to go back to our ground and dive inside. And now I will just hit the tab and type normal. Why am I doing this? Because currently, as you can see, I want the effects of the geometry looking a bit faceted. And right now it is somewhere, as you can see by the lightning, it's somewhere it looks faceted, like here, but somewhere it looks kind of smooth. I want everything to be faceted. So I'll go into our ground and I'll make the cusp angle of normals 0. And if I go back, as you can see, everything looks faceted, which is exactly what I was looking for. All right, we have our river, we have our ground. Let's make some sort of a tree. So I hit the tab, hit the tab, start writing geometry, and let's rename this geo to river, and this to a tree. And this is going to be a super primitive tree. Let's start with a circle actually. And what circle does is sometimes it starts from the primitive. What we're going to do is make it a polygon. And we are going to rotate into the ZX plane so it looks upwards. And then we will make the divisions, let's say 5. And then we extrude that. PEXD, poly extrude. And I just move it upwards. For some reason it was, as you can see from the circle, it's kind of inverted. So we'll first reverse it and then we will extrude it like that. So so it doesn't look broken or anything like that. So as you can see, this will be sort of like representation of our trunk for the tree. And possibly what we want to do is create more divisions and control the spline with a thickness ramp. As you can see, we will start sort of thick and it will be smaller going towards the top. Okay, maybe as a final thing, again, as previously, we will output the back. If I zoom in, and you will see there is pretty much nothing on the bottom of our trunk. So let's make it that it's kind of like watertight geometry. It's not exactly necessary, but you know, just to keep it safe. Again, hit the top, hit the start tapping the color, shift enter, make this brown. Okay, this looks fine. And next up, let's create a couple of spheres. Spheres will represent our leaves. Make it polygon, increase the frequency quite a bit, make the copy of that. And actually, let's make 3 copies. Now, how did I do the copies? I just hold the Alt key and left mouse button drag, and it creates the copy of the thing. So that's kind of useful. Okay, so I think we will compress the radius slightly on each of them. And now what we're gonna do is we will first merge everything. Now, possibly I shown you before, you can connect everything into merge one by one, or you can select everything, drag and drop, and merge will work just fine. Now what I'm gonna do now is transform. Something is wrong with me today. I cannot type a thing. My bad, I apologize. Transform it something like this. This sphere should be in the center, and this sphere should be transformed as well. So as you can see, I just can drag and drop nodes inside of our connections. If you want to get rid of it, you can press delete, Control Z to undo, or you can hold down the left mouse button, shake it, and as you can see, we did not delete this, but we just disconnected it from the connection of the node. And to connect it back, just drag and drop it here, and everything will work once more. Okay, I think let's make it a bit more like that. I'm not sure if it's a great representation of actually, you know what? I think we should decrease the frequency because it doesn't look really low poly all that much. Let's see what we can do. So we can do a mountain again over our merged geometry. Now I think we will increase the element size, height slightly, so it looks less regular, and give it a green color. Finally we have this, our trunk, this is our leaves, and what we're gonna do is merge once more. There you go. Doesn't look realistic, so we will transform our elements of the tree. Now that I look at it, it doesn't look all that low poly. I want it to be even more kind of stylized. Yeah, this looks okay. Now, another thing that I want to do possibly before I do the mountain is first I'm gonna connect all our geometry of the leaves, and so they don't have so they don't intersect each other. Now here's what's happening. If we have only merge, as you can see, it intersects each other and they do not share the edges. As you can see, the wireframe showcases it really well. But if we drop the Boolean and make it union, as you can see, something starts to appearing in the green color. It means that anything that was intersecting before, they now share edges, and it's just one geometry. If I select just this edge by pressing, by pressing S and 3 to select edges and transform, you can see that it indeed has become one part of the geometry. So that's really useful. Before I do the mounting, I think we can remesh once more to make it look a bit less regular. And yeah, this looks a bit better than maybe before. So we do the mounting, possibly decrease the height quite a bit. And there you go. This is our representation of the tree. Actually, it's a bit too large. So we're gonna transform it and scale it down. Something like this. Now, now that I look at that, I don't think I like the color all that much. I want to decrease the saturation here, make it possibly slightly darker. Change the super green to less super green, like this. And there you go. Now, currently, as you can see, our tree somehow stands inside of the river, which is not great. So what we're gonna do is transform once more, because this transformation, let's call it the scale. Another transformation will actually transform the tree. So I select this, select this node, press enter. And we can now start moving our tree around. Okay. So next up, I will transform it once more and move it to the right, because this will be copy 1. You will see what I mean after we merge the copies once again. All right, so this copy, let's move it right here. Another copy that's now is named copy 2 on itself. We don't need to change all that much. Let's move it somewhere over here. Maybe even rotate. Maybe even rotate it a bit. This copy, I would say rotate as well. And creates another copy. It will be called copy 3. Move it somewhere here. Then we type merge, select everything, merge it together, and we have our trees. Apparently this copy is, looking all weird. And I'm gonna just mess a bit with uniform scale. Maybe change rotation so it doesn't look exactly the same. This one as well. They do look kind of, they do look kind of the same, obviously, because it's the same geometry. Finally, I will again drop to normal, make it look super low, make it look faceted, decreasing the normals quite a bit. And what else? I think we could introduce stones. My bad. I'm constantly forgetting that first have to create geometry, make it stone. Go inside, another sphere. Again, make it polygon. Frequency looks actually all right. Make it mountain. And what we're going to do now is we are going to distribute our stones using this scatter. So what scatter will do is create it will create points, and we will copy onto the points. So first we have to have geometry that we will scatter upon. So it's called merge. What we're going to do is we will copy our ground into our stones object. First, we will merge the ground. By the way, to not get confused what is happening and what we should do, we could drop a null node. Null node does nothing, but we can name it out for scatter. And now that we know how it's named, we can actually go into our grounds and find the out for scatter, press accept. So that way we know what's happening. Now, what's happening is that we copied our object and inside our stones. So this doesn't make a lot of sense. Let me show you what we're going to do. We are going to drop another node that's called scatter. I press tab, start typing scatter, and if I connect the scatter, as you can see, I enable the visualization of the points, and indeed, the points have been scattered on our geometry. Now, this is a bit too much. 1000 is a bit too much. Let's say 60 will be fine. Relaxed iterations is spacing them out evenly. I don't want that as well, so let's say 0 or 1. But if we now copy 2 points, this is the node that we need to scatter our things and copy them. So target points is our scatter, connected here. Geometry to copy is our stones. But right now, as you can see, first of all, they are all green. Second of all, they're too big. And as the biggest problem, they are copied on the bottom as well. We don't want that. So how are we going to fix it? We will scatter our points only on the faces that are facing the top. And we will select those faces using another node that is called group. So, whoops, my bad. Group. So I drop it here. And as you can see, group is, well, as the name suggests, it selects the things. We can just select something that we want. If I select just this, press enter, as you can see, these numbers of the faces are shown here. I don't want that. What I want is select them by normals. Again, normals, as you already know, is those little things that are facing where our primitive normals are facing. Well, basically, they are normals. So what's going to happen is that I'm going to select normals that are facing only upwards. So to select those, we need to make the direction in the y-axis. As you can see, the z-axis goes back and forward, the x-axis goes left and right, and the y-axis goes top and bottom. So we need to make every other normal 0. And by the way, the normals go from -1 to 1, from 0 to 1 or -1. So if I insert just 1, we will select all the faces that look upwards. If I were to make it -1, you will see that all the faces that are directed at the bottom will be selected, as you can see. Again, if I make it 1, only the faces that look at the top will get selected. So now, group is named group 1. Let's say group for scatter. Oh, whoops, for scatter. Okay. Now, if I press scatter again and enable the visualization of the points, so we can basically see better what's happening, we can select the group for scatter, and as you can see, only faces that were selected by the group 1, which incidentally, in our case, were facing upwards, getting selected, and we are scattering things only on those faces. if I increase the total amount, you'll see what's happening, right? Again, this is a bit too much. Let's say 28, relaxed iteration 0. And if we now copy 2 points, first we have to color our points into whites or maybe slightly grayish. And next up, we will transform our things to make them, well, basically smaller, because this is, honestly, this is too much. And as you can see, after we copy it to points, the geometry that we imported, which was the copy of our ground, or rather not copy, but just a merge of this object, it disappeared. The only thing that is left after we scatter our points, and then we copied our geometry onto those points. Now what I'm going to do is drop another mounting node just to make our stones irregular. Before that, I don't really like how they look, so what I'm going to do now is compress and then remesh our stone. Whoops, this is looking crazy. Oh, okay, this was too small of a number. I think this will serve us well. By the way, I crazily was tapping escape just to fix the thing. Okay, so now that we compressed in size our stones, I think it's time. What I was going to do is decrease the height. Maybe increase the element size. Okay, this looks pretty much almost what I had in mind. The beauty of this solution is that if you want more of the stones, you can just increase the amount of stones and more stones will appear. If you don't like how they are scattered currently, you can always tweak the global seed, which will rescatter them by the noise. So I think this is it. The last part I wanted to create maybe would be some sort of representation of a cloud. So I'll go to the stones, as previously mentioned. Again, I'll make them look faceted by decreasing normals to 0. Shift W to disable the wireframe preview. Okay, final thing. Actually, I think I want to have another stone that will be kind of big. I'll transform it, move it around, have it somewhere here, remesh, and again mountain. We're using a lot of mountain today, don't you think? Okay. All right, this looks kind of interesting. We merge everything before we do the normal, like this. And then we normalize everything. And there you go. We have kind of like this huge rock. As a final thing, let's do another geometry. Let's name this cloud. Oops. And yeah, again, we'll use another sphere. Possibly we'll be a bit more creative this time. Sphere, we will compress it like this. Then we will scatter, scatter points on the sphere. Relaxed iteration 0. Total amount 15 will be, I suppose it will be fine. And finally, we will copy. Copy 2 points, and by the way, to make it appear faster, we CTP, and you can see we have the copy 2 points node. Required target points will be the scatter, and the required geometry to copy will be our sphere. So there you go. This is our cloud, fast and easy. Again, we can remesh it, but first we will boolean it, so it kind of becomes just one geometry. Then we'll remesh it, and finally we will make it a mountain once more. Okay, there you go. By the way, if I make a copy of this thing and left mouse drag and drop by holding down the Alt key, I can now type cloud, press Shift Enter, and this thing indeed will become a cloud. Finally, I'll press tab again, start typing cloud N as in cloud noise, and the cloud will be looking very, very cloudy-ish. Finally, let's transform it. And before I start moving the cloud around, I want to go and create orthographic camera. First, I will position my viewport, then hold down Control, left click. As you can see, it created the camera. I press the L key to lay out everything. And to convert this camera into orthographic, I'll hold down, click the lock key, and unclick perspective. And as you can see, we have a very, very compressed way of looking at this. So without any perspective, basically. So there you go. We created a camera that is orthographic, which means it doesn't have any perspective. Okay, actually, now that I look at it, I think we really should take a little bit of time moving our trees around, because they do look very, very much repetitive. My bad. Okay, let's go back to our camera, disable the wireframe preview, and now I will position our cloud. Should not be too hard. This looks, I don't know, fine. Finally, let's just left click these skylight and create skylights. It creates actually the sunlight and the skylight at the same time, which is really useful because if you start messing with the rotation of the sun, it will behave accordingly, first of all. And second of all, it will actually, if you make it sort of like evening scenario, it will actually even start changing the color. It becomes more yellow when it's on this low angle degree like this. So let's say it's sort of around 11 a.m. or something. And let's just see which angle works better. I really want the cloud shadow to fall somewhere around here. Okay, so now we go to render view, hit the render button, and let's see what we have so far. Give it a second to evaluate the geometry, to create everything, and there you go. Now, as a final thing, what I'm gonna do is I want the river to be shiny, the ground to be super nice shiny, as well as really rough stones. And not sure about the trees just yet. I think we will have very rough trees as well. And I want to have the clouds to be a bit more transparent. So let's do about that. We go to material palette, drag and drop the principal shader. Let's call it ground. Drag and drop that onto our ground. And as you can see, somehow the colors start changing. This is because the base color gets inherited from the shader. We'll just make it whites, and that's it. We can change the roughness. And I will hold down the Alt key, left drag, and let's call it tree. Drag it onto the trees. And roughness, as you can see, if I decrease the roughness, this starts to be shiny. I think roughness should be very high as well. This one would be river. And I drag and drop onto the, you guessed it right, river. And this roughness will be super, super low. Finally, we go to our material palette back, and we have this billowy smoke. I think it will be serving well, and we can drag and drop billowy smoke onto our little cloud. And to decrease the density, as the name suggests, we decrease the density. And this should solve pretty much all of our needs for this little scene. So there you go. This is our little setup. Actually, you can tweak the density a bit more. And yes, I think this looks rather well. It wasn't that hard, was it? So there you go. As a final thing, to increase the quality of our render, we can go to rendering, increase the limits, so we have more bounces of the light from the geometry, and we will increase that by increasing the diffuse limit, and we will increase the actual quality of the render by increasing the pixel samples to, let's say, 6x6, and give it a minute to render, and it will be looking good. And this is how we create our stylized low poly little small environment. So play with this. I suggest you learn a thing or two how to control all of that, because I know it can be a bit intimidating when you're just starting out. I just, by the way, just rotated the sun because I wasn't super fan of how the shadow of our cloud was dropping here. Hopefully it will look better here. So anyway, there you go. This is our stylized environment. Everything is more or less procedural. Of course, we did a lot of things by hand, but it doesn't mean that we could not tweak everything. And as you can see, we can always go back and tweak our stones. We can always go back and tweak the mountain amount of our ground. So yeah, play with this. Hopefully it was helpful. Hopefully you now know about transformation a bit more, how to select things, how to move polygons around, how to make super basic but kind of fun looking geometry, and of course create the sunlight, skylight, and the cloud. So there you go. Hope you have fun. I hope you learned something. Leave comments below. If you like what you've seen, press the like button. If you want to learn more about Houdini, because we will have more information on how to use the application, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. With that out of the way, hopefully you have a nice day, have fun, and see you later. Goodbye.